kind of an old projector, I found out. All right. Let me start off with a story. So Thursday, Wednesday night into Thursday, wasn't feeling the best. So I stayed home from work, and I just took a day of self-reflection. Now, could I have forced myself to go to work? Probably. But I decided it was time to take a break and to just take that day and just get peace. And you know what? I felt great on Friday. So there was definitely a difference from Thursday morning to Friday. And I've got tons of sick days because I never take days off. So, it was just time to take a sick day. It'd be Friday morning, I guess it was, after Thursday. Friday morning, I have a dream. And in this dream, my dad appeared, which usually I have come to associate with God wanting to tell me something. And so I remember, but I didn't notice it right off the bat, because here's what happened. It was early that morning, and I was in a situation where it was an early morning. Now, in case you didn't know this, I don't do early mornings very well. I'm not very good at that. I'm zombified a lot of times at 5:30 in the morning. So never plan anything that early, because you're not going to be able to have me be at my best. So I'm sitting there, and my dad is telling me, we need to do this, we need to do this, and we need to do this. And so in my dream, I remember thinking, must be Easter, because I said, there's no reason we'd be up this early getting ready to do something. And I'm having that. I'm hearing this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get there. And I was in that kind of sleepy mode where you're just agreeing to things because you just want people to be quiet. And I'm going to get there and everything. And the last thought that goes through my head is, wait a sec, I'm the pastor. Why is this happening? Because I do a lot of lucid dreaming where I kind of figure out in the middle that I'm actually dreaming. But as I prayed about that, because I really do feel like a lot of times when my dad appears in my dreams, it's usually a spiritual lesson. And as I was praying about that, it suddenly became with the idea that sometimes I may treat this as a job, but a pastor is a position. Now, many of you have that choice in your lives. I'm not going to dwell on that. If you need to talk to me about it later on, that's fine. But we're going to move on into application for you, not just strange dreams that John's having. But many of you have positions. My mom worked as a teacher. Now, she can either choose to be the person they pay to teach the kids, or she can choose to be the teacher. Do you get that? There's a difference. And we talked about it last week. We talked about a shepherd and a hired hand. He said the person that owns the sheep, he'll lay down his life for the sheep, because that sheep represents a lot of different things to them. All it does to the hired hand is represents a paycheck. Do you get that? And in our life, we choose the position we're going to play in our roles. Are we going through the motions, or are we taking charge of that role? This comes with maturity. We've talked about maturity here as well before. And the idea with maturity is that just like you, when you were born, were a baby and weren't responsible for much, as you've got older, you get more responsibilities placed upon you. And eventually, you may become the one that gives responsibilities to someone else as a parent. But you have to choose how far you mature in that. I've met a lot of people my age that are going through the motions. They're just doing what mom and dad kind of did and calling it good. They don't own the parent position because they're too busy worried about themselves. In the same way, in the kingdom of God, we can be that same person. Because we start out and, everything seems wonderful. We get saved. We're starting a new life. But it comes with some of the parts of the old life. Just like a baby has very little control over his arms and legs because he's not needed them before in the womb. And so they struggle trying to figure out that now my arms and legs can help me to crawl, to stand, and eventually go on further. Now Christians can be in the same thing. They go from pleasure to pleasure, looking for the next big concert, the next big thing, the next big this, and they forget that we're called to study and prepare ourselves so that we can mature just like we do in life. This may be a hard lesson for some of y'all. And we're going to talk about a group that had that same problem. In fact, it took them 40 years to figure out who they were supposed to be. And many of the people died without figuring out who they were supposed to be. But there needed to be a maturing time. What you were responsible for when you were first saved should not be with the same thing that you're responsible for now. You have to move from taking in to being able to give out. You have to be able to move from, oh, I just love this worship song and everything else, to being, I'm letting somebody else hear worship songs they need so that they can be edified the way I once was. And I choose to worship despite not quite getting this. Don't make this a worship sermon. This isn't a worship sermon, so I don't want that to be the only thing you hear today. If that's going to be the problem, strike that from your brain, please, because that's not what this is about. I'm just giving examples today. So we're going to turn to Joshua. Now, a big event has happened here. In Joshua 1, we start out the book with these statements, and it's a big statement. It says, after the death of Moses, so we have had an event. Moses has passed. Who is Moses? For those that may be a little bit newer to the faith or maybe don't know as much about the story, he led people out of Egypt and into Israel, and led them to the gates of Israel. But for 4 years, he had to help people to mature because they weren't ready to go into the promised land. They come out of Egypt as slaves, and they continued that slave mentality as they got ready to be on the door of going into their promise, because they were used to being beaten, they were used to being mistreated, they were used to being all these different things. And then they go and they look in this land, and all they can see is people that can beat them, mistreat them, and enslave them. And they said, I don't want to go in there. 10 of the 12 says, I don't want to go in there. Now 2 said, I'd like to have a home. I think we could go in there. But 10 of the 12 said, have you seen the size of these guys? And so because of this, Moses had to become, who was probably hoping to get rid of his responsibility over these people because he'd had some problems with them. Some anger had arisen with these people because they were always complaining. And because you know why? They weren't used to not having somebody snapping a whip over the top of their heads to make them do things. And so Moses had to say, hey, everybody, let's get up, let's go do. And they just kind of like, yeah. So for 40 years, they then walked around in a circle around the desert. They became, from slaves, they became nomads. And 40 years later, all that slavery got out of them. But before that happened, God wouldn't allow Moses to go into the promised land because Moses had chosen to step out of God's will for him and had done a bad thing before the people. And so God said, I can't let you go into the promised land because you refuse. You are an example. And he didn't say this directly. I'm giving you the John version. Remember this part here? This is just me trying to understand the mind of God. You exhibited the fact that you haven't gotten rid of your anger before the people. The exact thing I'm trying to get rid of out of them, showing them that they can continue to behave in the way that they're behaving. And Moses wasn't allowed to go into the promised land, but he led them up to a place where they could see the promised land. But for 40 years, they had passed this place like a NASCAR race, round and around and around and around the holy mountain. But then Moses died. he was carried off, and he went up. It says he went up to the mountains and passed away. But he wanted to see the promised land that he would never step foot in. So Joshua starts out with this statement. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant. And he said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land that I've given them. Now remember, Joshua has been trained to make left turns. Mountain over here, left. We keep going left, around the mountain, around the mountain, around the mountain. But now God's telling him, I need you to take them straight. Ooh, we've never done straight. This might be a little different. Never had to lead people into something. We've always just walked around the mountain. Sometimes you're asked to do things that the person before you didn't have to do. One of the biggest things I hear at work, my poor boss gets compared a lot to the previous boss. Well, Jeff didn't do it that way. Jeff didn't do this. Jeff didn't do that, because my boss will take a hard line and said, if it's not related to pastoral care, we're no longer doing it. Because we are here for pastoral care, and pastoral care stands on its own. We're not here to do parties. We're not here to do this. We're not here to do that. We are here to minister to people in this hospital, keeping first things first. Sometimes you're going to have to be asked to do something the previous leader wasn't going to do, and you're going to get flack for it. I guarantee you, when Joshua said, "Hey guys, we're all going into the promised land," everybody's like, "What? I'm used to lefts." and he's having to tell them, we're going to go into the promised land. We're going to do something different than we've done for 40 years. For 40 years, we have packed up the tents and gone this way. Now we're going in, and we're going to take back the land. And our ultimate goal is instead of tents, we're going to live in houses. We're going to build from this land a home for our people. But this time the people were with him. Next verse. It says, I promise you what I promised Moses. Wherever you set foot, you will be on land I have given you. From the Negev wilderness to the south, to the Lebanon mountains in the north. From the Euphrates River in the east, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. Let's take a look at that. All right. So we have the Negevs down here. To the what? Give back up one, please. I've got it on here. Lebanon mountains up there. We got the Euphrates and the Mediterranean. He's saying all that will be theirs. He laid it out. This is going to be your land. This is going to be a land for the people. But you got a problem. Some of these people you meet are going to be smaller to you, and you should be okay in battle with them. Some of these people you meet are going to be bigger. And he said, you're going to have to listen to me. And we're going to do things we haven't done before. I'm sure Joshua kind of... And the gateway to the land was a town called Jericho. And Jericho was known for its high fortresses and that it had never been conquered. And this was the first place they were going to try to go in. Next verse, please. It said, including all the land of the Hittites. Now, the Hittites were a fierce people. They were scared of. And so God's saying, if you're getting scared about Jericho, I'm going to send you into the Hittite land and have you take your land back from them. Like I said, in that time, they were these were scary people. If you ever played the game Age of Empires, the Hittites were famous because they had long lances that they could reach you before you got to them. And I know that's a weird reference, but anyways, I always thought that was funny because I like to play as them because they had those long lances. You didn't have to like engage with people as much. It says, no one will be able to stand against you as long as you live, for I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you. He said, even though I'm asking you to do something different than I asked Moses, I'm still going to go with you. It's just, you're going to know me in a different way than what Moses did. Now, Moses must have been an incredible leader because he convinced all these people to walk in a circle for 40 years and not change anything. That's a certain kind of leader. But now, in the leader that Joshua was going to have to be, it's called a visionary leader. That's a leader that has to help you to see the vision as he sees it. You need one type. It's a little bit like a wartime and a peacetime leader. A peacetime leader just keeps things the status quo, same as what Moses was doing. We're going to keep going around the mountain. You see that you see. I'll not get that. You see when the ark moves forward, we're going to move forward, and we'll just follow that ark. And everybody's like, okay, I got this. I can do this. But then Joshua said, we're going to do something different. That brook that we always camp beside, this time we're going across the brook. Oh, we've never been across the brook. I know, it's scary for me too, but we're going to do it. You're not going to be comfortable with everything you're asked to do. But that's the difference between being the person you're supposed to be and going through the actions of being the person that you're supposed to be. Because if you are the person that you're supposed to be, you find strength. And God gives you what Rusty talked about, that idea that he could lead you with the valley and get you through it. If you choose to act like it, God doesn't empower that. I see a lot of marriages fail because people try to act like their parents once did. But unfortunately, they weren't in some of the conversations that their parents have had and didn't realize that mom and dad, sometimes they didn't get along and they had to work things out behind closed doors. But then the kid hits it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is too hard. I'm doing something wrong. I'm getting out. There was no getting out for Joshua. Once they went into this land, they were going to have to fight everybody until the land was clear. He was going to have to be a leader. Let's move to chapter 3. In chapter 2, he sends in spies to go see this city. And you know, the guys saw that this city was impregnable in the natural forces, but they also saw that these people were lazy. That they had relied on these walls for so long that they wouldn't be able to fight them hand to hand. And they come back and tell Joshua, having learned the lesson from back when Joshua went out to spy, they said, we're well able to take this land. And we pick up here in 3:1. He said, early the next morning, Joshua and the Israelites left the acacia grove and arrived at the banks of the Jordan River where they camped before crossing. And 3 days later, the Israelite officers went throughout the camp, giving these instructions to the people. When you see the Levitical priest carry the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, move out from your positions and follow them. God's going, remember, the ark was a representation of who God was. It was considered his throne. And he said, when you see God moving that way, he said, I need you to all to get up and you're going to follow him. It's a scary time. Change is happening. The brook that we didn't normally cross, the brook we always turn left at, we're going across it. He said, and you notice how Joshua didn't tell them that we're going to go across that brook. He said, when you see the Levitical priest carrying the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, move out your positions and follow them. We need you to follow God again. So I believe that at this time, only Joshua knew they were getting ready to go across this, as well as probably the priest too, since they were going to be leading. It's a scary time. Change is happening. Next verse. Since you have never traveled this way before, They will guide you. Since you have never traveled this way before, let me read that with the ark in there. The ark, or God's presence, will guide you. You're going to have to rely on his guidance, on his rod and his staff. I want you to stay a half a mile behind them, keeping a clear distance between you and the ark. Make sure you don't come any closer. Next verse. Then Joshua told the people, purify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do great wonders among you. I believe that Joshua said to purify yourselves because he wanted to make sure there was nothing that could mess this up, because once again, we're doing something we've never done before. And sometimes we have to over-prepare to be able to do the things that we need to do. But we go back to one of my favorite pastors. His saying is that we have to work like it depends on us, but pray like it depends on God. He said that's how you can have spiritual success, is if you keep that idea in your mind. So Joshua said, listen, we don't want to do anything to mess this up. I need you all, make sure you're in a right heart, right mind, and purify yourself. And we're going to go do this. And I believe that the Lord's going to do great wonders. He's stepping out on faith. He's having to do something different than what Moses did. See, Moses had never passed through the people, or it's not recorded, and said, hey, listen, I need you to purify yourself before we pick up and move tomorrow. So I know that they know that something's off, because it says he told them to do it. And this is different than what Moses did. It's hard being a leader and saying those things when people don't really know about it. And you're like, Let me tell you about a thing. You know, when Tony put this projector up here, I've seen that split churches. You wouldn't think that. But that very thing has split churches. That idea that we're going to project the scriptures on the wall, that we're going to project the songs on the wall, it's split churches that got hung up about doing something different or staying the same. But the problem is, staying the same, that's the essence of religion. Because it's that formula that we put together to understand God, to put God in the box that we want him in, so that we can know what he's going to do. And I was talking about this with a friend last night. I said that the problem is that it's not God that's in our box. No, it's us that's in the box, because we can't get outside of our own thinking. That when we try to put something in a box, it means that we're not capable of thinking outside of who we are. That's a dangerous thing, because we serve a God that is more powerful, is more intelligent, more capable of anything we are ever capable of. And if we believe that we're the end-all be-all, we can't serve a God who is the end-all be-all. So the priests started out, and they went ahead of the people. They lifted up the Ark of the Covenant and led the people across the river. And they started out and went ahead of the people. The Lord told Joshua, today I'll begin to make you a great leader in the eyes of the Israelites. They will know that I'm with you, just as I was with Moses. Notice how God didn't say before he was going to make him a great leader. He wanted to see if Joshua would do something different than what Moses had taught him. But when Joshua stepped out on faith, told the people we're going to follow the Levitical priests, and he told the Levitical priests, you're going to head right to that river. God said, I'm going to make you a great leader in front of all these people because you chose to listen. You heard. And he said, so you don't have to worry about the rest of this, because I'm making you a leader. I'm going to make up for your lack. Interesting. I have to step out and be the leader that he called me before I can become a great leader. It's a hard lesson. We've talked about this before, that we like things that we've seen done before. It gives us comfort. It lets us know that we can do, that it can be done. We don't like it when people describe something that we've never seen before. And the Lord gave Joshua a vision he started out with just a vision of crossing that river. And then at this time, he hadn't told him how they were going to defeat the walls of Jericho, but he just needed Joshua to take the first steps and cross the river. Now, amazing things happened when they crossed the river, and I didn't put this in. I didn't know how pressed we'd be for time, but I am wrapping up if my worship team wants to come up. Amazing things happened when they walked in the river. When they walked in the river, when the priest stepped foot in that river, all of a sudden, just like when they crossed the Red Sea, the water parted. And they stood on dry ground. And they stood in that middle of the river while all the people came over. And then before they closed up the river, they put stones out there to commemorate it, to show that God was with them thus far. The first part of Israel coming into their promised land.